Have you ever wondered how to best utilize data in your behavioral interview answers? In this video, I'm going to uncover the simple yet very specific and critical areas where we're going to need to utilize this data. We're going to focus using the STAR method, that's situation, task, actions, and results. And we're going to dive deep into how to drive results with data, specifically in your behavioral actions. Stay tuned till the end. We'll do a sample example answer. All right, let's do it. Item number one is the situation. In your situation, there are only a few critical areas where we're going to want to really uncover data. You need to state your role in company and provide any background information on one or the other or both if needed. If you work at a smaller company, maybe I've never heard of your organization and you need to give me the 3 to 5 second overview. Maybe you work for a really large company, so you need to niche down and go past saying you're just a program manager at that company, for example. This data establishes credibility, and it's often missed. I am your interviewer. I may have never looked at your background, and for most of us, we've worked at multiple companies, so I don't really know where this example is coming from. So these simple data points are critical and get me super connected. Now, this next step is I want you to get connected to the question that's being asked of you. All we need to do at this stage is provide a few specific details that are going to get our interviewer to pay attention. We want to wake them up, get them to pay attention, and remember, the trickiest part of this is that these data points need to be specific, yet also be generic enough because the specificity within our organization might be a little bit challenging for them to understand. Also, make sure that you are not using abbreviations. Abbreviations can really throw them off track. So what are we looking for here? To keep them or get them connected, we're just looking for a few key items. We're maybe talking about the critical stakeholders, we're talking about the process, the costs, and this is going to be tough. It's going to require practice. I want just your situation to be 20 to 25 seconds. Really, really short. So practice makes perfect. Now, item 2 is the task. This is the area that I actually care the least about data except for one item, and that's the timeline. Timeline is such a great data point to give your interviewer a little bit of context. So instead of just saying, I was tasked with bringing the program back on track, it could be, I was tasked with bringing the program back on track in 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, etc. And establishing that timeline will really help your interviewer understand things like urgency, complexity, difficulty, etc. Just take this simple step of adding the timeline and it will add a great data point for your interviewer. Item 3, actions. Okay, this is the big one. Remember, your actions should make up about 65 to 70% of your answer. So the biggest shift that will bring out that data is moving from storytelling to doing. And let's go through the 3 critical areas in your answer that I really want to focus in on. And let's start from the beginning. Most answers, the foundation of where we start most of the time is in that research, analysis, and having conversations with critical stakeholders. And what I need to know is when you were conducting this research and analysis, what data did you look at? How did you go about gathering this information? And then what method did you use to share this data with the critical stakeholders? Was it a simple meeting? Was it a presentation? Was it a slide deck? Was it a whiteboard session? What was it? And then also, I want to know a little bit more about how you uncover data by communicating with those critical stakeholders as well. Next, we move on to the most critical part, driving results with data in both the testing and execution phase. And what happens? Oftentimes, candidates aren't even bringing up the execution phase or they're going through it really quickly. But how we drive results with data starts in the testing phase. Rarely are we just doing anything full out. We're usually going to test it with a small user audience, a smaller market, etc. So really talk about how that data informed strengths, weaknesses, what was it, how did you look at it, and then how did you apply this data into the larger execution phase and utilize the learnings from the testing phase to really get those fantastic results. It's a lot in this stage, but we really need to think about how we were driving the project, the program, initiative forward. And then lastly, we really want to get into that documenting, presenting, launching, socialization, this step that comes at the end. The missing data point is I typically don't know how my clients or typically how candidates went about doing it. And so I don't want you to go too high level. I want to know the exact method that you presented or socialized this information, very similar to our first action and how we shared it with those initial critical stakeholders. This will be so powerful because oftentimes presentation and just presenting skills and documentation on socialization will be a part of your job description. So really, really important item to be thinking about. Now, item 4, results. There's just really 3 critical data points here. Data point 1 answers the question. So often our results are driven by something else. So always make sure data point number 1 actually answers the question that's being asked of you. Now, data point number 2 is numbers. Remember, numbers are the universal language. Now, we should spread these throughout our results, but I just had to bring it in as a number. So just make sure that you're really, really pushing on those numbers. And back percentages by real data. It saved 30% of time, which was equal to 10 hours per team per week, because percentages can also have some ambiguity. So really dive in there. And then data point number 3, my favorite, is repeatability. Bring in data that showed you had a larger impact. Maybe that was a larger impact. You started with a process or strategy in your group and you socialized and documented and shared with other groups. Maybe you won over this big client and then you won more deals with that client, or it became a use case to win over 10 other clients. Repeatability is so huge as a data point because I don't hire you to do one thing great once. I hire you to continue to have a larger impact on the organization. Think of it like the end of a good book or a good movie. When the end is great, it's more likable, we enjoy it more. Same experience for your interviewer. So item 5 is our example answer. This is an example answer that I provided in a video on November 2nd in my good versus bad example video, and I'll pin a card up there so you can go and watch that video. But let's go through it. And what you're going to see is all the data points that I introduced. The reason why I wanted to round it out with this example was I think you'll see all the areas that we discussed before and how this data is now embedded into this answer. So let's use the example question of, tell me about a time a project you were managing was running seriously behind schedule and what you did about it. So in our situation, this is an example from my time as a program manager focused in on the supply chain at Apple, specifically in our refurbished cell phone division. Our project was to get refurbished iPhone X cell phones to one of our major vendors, in this case Best Buy, and we were running seriously behind schedule because it was 3 months into this program and then COVID hit. And by the end of April, we were already a month behind schedule. Let me tell you about the actions I took to turn around this project in 3 months. The actions. The first action I took was I needed to research some alternatives. So I did 2 things. I did a situational analysis and a gap analysis focused in on getting our products to this critical vendor. And I came up with the idea to utilize Best Buy's Geek Squad as a delivery and logistics solution. I created a short 3-slide presentation shared via video with a few critical stakeholders, specifically my lead, my skip lead, and the logistics expert from our team. Everyone agreed that this approach was valid, but needed additional sign-off before pitching to Best Buy. I was part of a number of additional meetings and working in partnership with legal, and we agreed the idea was ready to pitch. So I reached out to the critical stakeholders at Best Buy with this idea. Some of those critical stakeholders included my internal stakeholders, my colleagues, and our senior counsel. And after some back and forth, including expediting those contracts resolved on the legal side, we had an agreement to use Best Buy's Geek Squad to help getting our refurbished iPhone X's into their possession to sell. The tricky part was the execution. We needed to test that this solution would work, and we piloted it through California's 3 largest cities, Los Angeles, San Diego, and San Jose. Before piloting, we even went and worked with the research team to survey everyone involved in the process, and then we put a 2-week timeline on gathering some initial results. And these initial testing results were clear. The satisfaction was through the roof. And then in the next 2 weeks, we decided to execute and roll that out because of that success to every major city in the US. By the time we hit September, at the end of Apple's fiscal year, before the iPhone 11 release, I had the opportunity to present this case to some senior leadership at Apple, and some of the opportunities to get more creative with delivery and logistics in this unknown time during COVID. Lastly, I documented what I did. I shared it with our internal team for future reference. The results were we got our program back on track by September, and we were only about 2 weeks behind our initially scheduled dates. We anticipated a savings of $6 million in shipping costs by utilizing the Geek Squad, and we helped not only get the products out, but we created a stronger partnership with Best Buy. And some of their employees were able to still keep working during COVID while their stores were shut. I was fortunate enough to receive a performance award given to only 3 employees at all of Apple globally. And lastly, this model proved repeatable for smaller third-party vendors that also had transportation systems in place. You can see this answer is riddled with data. I hope that just diving a little bit deeper into where we want to call out data will help you have tremendous success. Good luck.